Katie Lee. Is that Katie Lee or is it Katie Lee?
Thank you so much, Russell. Okay, so I'm going to be talking about the tech transfer teams today, and this is going to be sort of a two-part talk. I'm first going to do my normal spiel and kind of introduce you to the tech transfer teams and the work that we do. And then secondarily, I'm going to talk more about results. So the tech transfer teams are a part of the much larger Bee and Plum Partnership, which is a national initiative to try to lower overall colony mortality across the nation. And the premise behind doing this is to collect data from different sources. So those annual surveys, the management surveys too, the National Honeybee Disease Survey, historical records, and then on-the-ground information that's primarily done by the tech transfer teams, and collect all of this into a database, have researchers mine the database, and then come up with regional best management practices that we can give back to beekeepers. So the tech transfer teams were started with sort of crop consultants or extension agents in mind. Marla Spivak is the one that came up with the idea based off of the team in Ontario, Canada. And the idea is to work out in the field with beekeepers, try to understand what their issues are and do what we can to help understand what's going on in their hives. So we have two primary objectives. The first goal is to try to provide the beekeepers that we work with useful information about their colonies. And the second long-term goal is to eventually develop best management practices that we can share with a much larger group of beekeepers. So we are spreading. These are all the tech teams that are out there now. So the first one was in Northern California, where Ben and Rob, if you two could raise your hands, right there, work now. And then I started the one in the Midwest, and then Hawaii, who's not here, and the Pacific Northwest. Ellen is here, Ellen. And Liana is the Florida team. And then Megan most recently just started the team in Texas. Megan, thank you. It's a lot of fun to work with people. And then actually Liz Frost is also here, who's sort of a past member, but we incorporate her whenever she's in the country. So we work with a very large and diverse group of beekeepers based on where their locations are. Overall, we work with over 80 and collectively managing over 400,000 colonies, so roughly about 13% of the nation's colonies. So we work with a very large and very diverse set. So we each try to get to know the needs of our specific group of beekeepers. So the Northern California guys are very different than the Pacific Northwest and the Midwest beekeepers, for example. This is the normal route that we run, just to give you an idea of what our season is like. This is what we normally run in the Midwest. We're out in North Dakota and Minnesota working with beekeepers out there, about 18, sampling when they're out in the Dakotas to produce honey. And then some of them migrate out to California to do almonds, others go down to Texas, and some do all three. So we get to go out and follow the beekeepers to these different locations. So even though we work with very different sets of beekeepers, where each team is capable of collecting the same type of data, this is just a list of the general yard and colony data that we collect. Each colony that we sample gets a tag. My color in the Midwest is pink. It's debatable if people actually like that or not, but they're easy to spot. People remember where they are. That helps. But we record different yard data, and we record the suite of colony information to help us understand how healthy the colonies are and certain parameters the beekeepers themselves ask us to record. So I'm just going to go over a few of these. We rate frames of bees to get a better estimation of how large the colonies are. We record queen status, so if the queen is there and laying or otherwise. And if we find her, we'll mark her, and if you're really lucky, Megan will paint a little heart on her. We rate brood pattern on a scale of 1 to 5, as we were really trying to differentiate, especially the ones in the 1 category or 2 category and the 5, to try to because a poor brood pattern is often indicative of disease or queen issues. And then we almost never give out 5, so please don't take it personally if you don't get one. 5s are like we go, ooh, and have to show the other person that we're working with. We note any pests or diseases that we see in the colony, from small hive beetles, wax moths, EFB, chalk brood, Varroa. Whatever we see going on in the colony, we'll mark down, and we'll make other notes, like if they're low on pollen or low on nectar or something as well, if we see that's going on. So then we take samples. So almost every colony that we perform assessments on, we take a Varroa and Nosema sample. In the same sample, 300 bees in a little 4-ounce plastic jar. They're shipped off to the University of Maryland, where their team of almost robots go through them. It's done, turnaround time is extremely fast for the number of samples that we send in. And everything is very standardized. It's much better than working in the kitchen and trying to do this on your own. So they've been absolutely fabulous. So this is at the University of Maryland lab that processes the samples. So we can take different samples based on what the beekeepers are interested in, based on what we might see in the colony. We can take virus samples, samples for protein. We can send live queens off to David Tarpey at NC State to get them processed for insemination quality. We can send off samples if we're unsure if the colony has AFB or EFB. And we can also sample for pesticides if the beekeeper thinks something is going on there. So based on what they're interested in, we can take these different types of samples. Nutrition. Well, protein hopefully gets a little bit better at nutrition.
But you send those to Oregon State?
Yeah, we do. Sorry, that's why it's up there. It's protein at Oregon State. The question was nutrition.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is protein.
Yeah, well, that's sorry. Yeah, that's what's measured is the protein head content. So they chop off the little So we record really detailed information about treatment and management. Very confidential. Sometimes it feels like we're asking them questions at the doctor's office. They're all personal gifts. But we record all their different types of treatments, dosages, what they use and when, different feeding supplements, and the history of the colony, so where that colony has been and where it might be going. And if the beekeeper is a breeder, what we can do is sample their potential breeder colonies. So how this works is the beekeeper generally selects a pool of colonies based on what they find important in a breeder colony and what their clients find important. And then we can come through and test those colonies for the diseases and pests and for the disease-resistant trait hygienic behavior, which I'll talk about in a moment. And then the beekeeper, if they choose, can make decisions based off of that and select breeder colonies with either the best hygienic behavior or the lowest pathogen levels. So hygienic behavior is a disease resistance test. My professor, Marla Spidak at the University of Minnesota, the hygiene queen, is one of the reasons why we started the program in the beginning was to help beekeepers select for this trait. So how it works is I would take a 3-inch PVC pipe, grind it into sealed brood, freeze and kill the brood with liquid nitrogen, let that tube thaw, pull it out, mark the frame, and put it back into the colony. In 24 hours, we come back and find that same frame and record the percentage of brood that the bees removed. So, I'm terrible at left and right. The left. Okay, whoops. Okay, there we go. So, well, you can see the ones that they basically removed all of the brood, all the pupae. Those are the ones that are the most hygienic. So if they remove 95% or better of the dead pupae, versus the other ones not so hygienic. And this correlates with disease resistance to chalk brood, AFB, and can help with Varroa levels. Okay.
arrow going.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
Okay. There we go. So it's really important for us to get the data back out to the beekeepers after we record it. And we do this with various different reports. One is an individual report where we provide them the information back that we took colony assessments, and then for the Varroa and Nosema samples. So everything that we write down is listed out in this report. And then because the other metrics can take a little longer to process, we send those out in a different report so we can get the some information back to the beekeepers immediately. And normally that's about a 7 to 10 day turnaround after we take the samples. And then we also provide a summary report where the beekeepers are able to compare themselves anonymously to the other beekeepers within their tech team. So I'm just going to go over some of the reports because I think it's kind of fun. So this is an example of part of an individual report. So this is specifically to that beekeeper's operation that we sampled. We often, at least we often take, so sample 5 yards, 10 colonies in each yard. So you can see the yards listed, and then the average and minimum and maximum levels for Varroa, Nosema, and frames of bees. So this is at the top of the report. This gives a summary for all the yards. So you can quickly look at it and try to find the outliers. So for this one, if you saw that, you know, you'd make a noise like Russell, maybe. But that draws your attention right away instead of having to pour over the long list of data. So I really like the summaries of the yards. But you can see right away that yard 3 has high Varroa compared to the other ones. And then this is the data all listed out for each individual colony that we sample. So in the yellow, the current samples, and then in the white are the previously sampled. So we often sample a colony more than once. Well, we do in the Midwest. We follow colonies over time. So every time that colony was sampled, all that information is on there. So, okay, so 1301 was sampled in October. That's all of its information from when we were out in October for that specific colony. And then that is the colony history. So if a beekeeper were interested, they can go back and see what that colony was like in the past if they're having issues with it now.
Sure.
And this is an example of one of the summer reports. This is actually from the Midwest in October of this year. So what this shows is that each letter on the horizontal axis represents one of the beekeepers that we sampled for the Midwest Tech team in October. And then each individual dot is a colony. Okay, if I go over graphs a lot because I like them. I see things better in pictures. So if I'm not explaining this properly, if somebody could just let me know because I'm sure somebody else would have the same question. But each individual dot is a colony, and the higher the dot is, the more Varroa that colony had. So this shows infestations for Varroa for each of the beekeepers that we sampled in the Midwest this October. So you can see what the spread is.
That's for real?
Yeah, this is for real.
That's real data that we did.
This is real data that we did.
What's the raw bee?
I'll get there. Okay. So, and then you can also look at what your levels were like for this year compared to the previous year, if you were sampled within the previous year. Same thing, this shows mites per 100 bees. That's the standard way we report it. The taller the bar is the higher the Varroa levels. So again, each set of bars is a beekeeper. The blue is this year, and the kind of turquoisey color is the previous year. So you can see what your levels were like both this year and last year compared to other beekeepers. And then those skinny black bars show how variable the data is. So if a beekeeper had very variable data, so lots of really low numbers and lots of really high numbers, the longer that little skinny black bar will be. And then this is, we give them a report that shows over time too. So this is from October 2014 to October 2015. Same thing, Varroa levels, higher the bar, higher the level. And then it shows orange is the Midwest Tech team, blue is nationally, and then green is that particular beekeeper.
For that time period.
For that time period.
Yeah.
Yeah, from October to October. And same thing, all of these graphs, we also do the same thing for nosema as well. So you can compare both. But you can see, what the trend is like over time for each Varroa and nosema. And then we also provide the reports for the hygienic behavior as well. So this is one individual beekeeper, how their hygienic scores have changed from 2011 to 2015. So the higher the levels on this one, the better the hygienic scores. Does that make sense? Okay. We've taken a lot of samples, over 33,000 so far since the start of the program in 2011. And we're continuing to collect samples. So the database will just grow larger. Everything that we do, it's critical to us that it's anonymous, maybe to a fault. But eventually researchers will be given access once they're vetted, but even then when they're given access, they'll only have access to certain parts of the data, and everything will still be anonymous. The more data, the more interesting trends. I'm getting my PhD with Marla, hopefully. And I'm planning on going through a lot of this data for my thesis, especially mostly the Midwest stuff. But okay. All the beekeepers that participate are paying in at some level, except for Texas for the first year. But otherwise, I just wanted to mention that everybody is included in the program. However, if we're not in your area and you're interested, or the pricing is too expensive, then we can actually train beekeepers to take their own samples and do their own colony assessments. Nothing we do is what beekeepers can't do themselves. So you just have to know the process. So we can go out to either your location or you can come out to a specified location, and we can train people to take their own samples. And then you get reports back as well, similar to the others. Also, we can either send out, or if we're in the area, we can do these for people. These are the emergency response kits. So if a beekeeper is having large losses, we can go out and sample 8 healthy colonies and 8 sick colonies and see if there's any differences. This doesn't always tell you what's going wrong with your colonies, but you can eliminate maybe a few of the things. But they give you Varroa, nosema, and viruses, and then pesticides if you wish. So this is generally what we try to do for beekeepers, and depending on the beekeepers that we work with and depending on the area, we do different things for them. Like in the Midwest, we follow colonies over time, but for a lot of beekeepers, they want us to identify what their Varroa and nosema levels are, so they understand where they're at. So Mike Andre termed the word peace of mind. Some people just want us to come out and kind of know where their levels are, so then they can sleep better at night, sometimes with lower Varroa levels. So we can test potential breeder colonies. We can look at if treatments worked or not in their colonies, so test before and after treatments. We can do the remote tech transfer team training, and then for some beekeepers and researchers, we can do some collaborations. So we can work with researchers that are interested in doing work with commercial beekeepers, or we can test different products out for beekeepers as well. So like we tested out a few different ways of treating with fumagillin this past year. Okay, so now we get to what have you been seeing this year? So that's the normal kind of spiel that I give for the tech transfer teams. Any of the tech transfer team people that are here are very friendly and more than happy to chat. They're all lovely people. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask any of us. So unsurprisingly, we see queen issues when we're out. I love that picture.
Oh.
Yeah, but it was good timing. At least we got a good picture out of it. So queen issues are, in the annual survey, what commercial beekeepers list as their most common cause of colony mortality. And we see quite a number of queen issues when we're out, mostly in the fall in the Midwest. And just a preliminary analysis of some of the data that we've collected in the Midwest. Colonies that have queen issues sometime over the summer are 5.5 times more likely to be dead come February. So this is a really, really important problem. We're hopefully going to look more at this in the future. Okay, so this is European foul brood. We've been seeing a bit of European foul brood out. So this shows the results for California, Pacific Northwest, and the Midwest. So Minnesota, North Dakota. And this shows the percentage of beekeepers that we sampled that had foul brood. So if we sampled 10 beekeepers and one of them had European foul brood, it would be 10% of them. So it was more prevalent in the Midwest than we've seen in the past. But it seems to be going down in California and the Pacific Northwest, at least for the beekeepers that we're working with. So I'm going to probably spend the rest of this talking about Varroa. Okay, so when we go out, some of the beekeepers have us test different types of colonies. So they'll have us test the colonies that they call sometimes affectionately their old ladies. So the colonies that weren't requeened in the spring. And unsurprisingly, they tend to have more mite issues than the ones that were requeened in the spring, probably because they just start out bigger. And big colonies with lots of bees and brood tend to have more Varroa issues later on. I want to emphasize that I don't think, and there's research coming out, that we're not really dealing with the same mite that we had been in the past. So there's evidence that some of the virus issues are becoming worse, and I think we are seeing that in the field. So the reason why I have a picture up there with a needle and an arm is because that's pretty much what the mite is doing. I looked for a picture of a dirty needle, which would probably be more accurate, but it gave me the heebie-jeebies, and I just had to not Google image that. But the viruses can replicate within Varroa, and they can inject it directly into the bee, especially to form wing virus. And it can just replicate at such a high level that it can really, really cause some damage in bees. And there's some papers coming out showing that there's worse strains than others too. So people sometimes take it personally when we talk about mites and mite issues, but I just want to stress that no matter how good of a beekeeper you are, everybody deals with mites. They're just awful. Yeah, you're welcome. So I tailored the rest of this talk a bit to deal with Russell. Yeah, that is why I wouldn't tell you. So we had a conversation at dinner last night where Russell was trying to get us to say if we thought it was going to be a catastrophe or not this year with mites, if the levels were higher, and if we thought there were going to be a lot of colony losses. Okay, so another graph, another table, chart. Okay, so what this chart shows, I'm just going to be talking about Midwest data for the rest of this because that is the data I know and understand. So it's a smaller subsection of all the tech teams, but it's the data I know best. And there are 600,000 at least colonies out in North Dakota over the summer, so it may be relevant. So what this shows is, again, average mite levels, higher the bar, higher the mite levels, in January, February, May, June, August, and September and October for the different years. The years are color-coded, where that dark red that's kind of the color of a mite is 2012, blue is 2013, green is 2014, in orange is this year, is from this year. So Russell's question was if the mite levels in August were higher than they've been in the past. And by this alone, it looks like they are. I will say when we started the tech team out in the Midwest in 2012, those are the worst losses I've ever seen. But, okay.
Katie Lee,
What?
September, October, are those post-treatment or pre-treatment?
Thank you, George. Okay, so the question is if September, October, post-treatment or pre-treatment. So that is an incredibly valid point. So the answer is it's both. August, May, June. May, June is always post-treatment. August is always post-treatment. With these are our main sampling periods, which is why I have them up there. September, October, we try to do post-treatment as much as possible, but it's not possible. So it's a mix, but normally it's the same mix every year.
Did you say August was pre?
August is pre,
Okay.
right? Should I say that?
You said.
Pre-treatments. I apologize. Thank you, Megan.
So September, October, is it primarily post-treatment or primarily pre-treatment or?
So the issue sometimes is that we sample a little too soon before the treatments run its course necessarily. Or we sample in the middle of when a beekeeper is treating. So like if we they've only treated part of their yards by the time we get out there. So it's a total mix. So especially September, October can be especially misleading because some of the levels, and I'll go into this a little bit. I think I have another graph showing how different they can be.
It's pretty scary no matter what.
Yeah. I mean they're pretty high no matter what. And this is average. So the next slide is a huge caveat slide. And this is, I just wanted to start this out with the rest of this before we go too far into it. These are the confidence intervals. So these show how variable those levels are for different beekeepers for each of these different points. So technically they're actually not different, they're so variable. So I also wanted to put up the total losses. So what I worry about when I go into too much detail, which is why I have an issue going into too much detail sometimes, is because I don't want to say that this is representative, one, even of the commercial beekeeper's operation. Sometimes we're only sampling 50 colonies and they have 10,000. It's unclear if it means that much for their in particular operation. And then we only sample 18 beekeepers in that entire region. So it's unclear if it means anything on the larger scale for the region, for interpreting if the mite levels are going to be really, really bad this year. So I just want to go in with that caveat that this is a subsection of what's out there. This is what we work with. I will say a lot of the beekeepers are really, really good beekeepers too. So they might not be representative of the whole. Not that the beekeepers don't work with are bad, but to be clear, that is what I sounded like I was saying, so I just want to be clear. But I put the losses up there. I realize people sometimes have issues with these whole losses, but total losses in particular are commercial beekeeper losses. They're the losses that this could be relevant for. So they're color-coded too. But I just want to put that up there because sometimes the mite levels don't necessarily translate into total losses because there's a lot more going on besides just mites as well. Okay, so I just wanted to do a big caveat slide to take everything that I say next with a grain of salt.
But the name of this talk is Results Beekeepers Can Use.
Yeah, too bad, Gus. Okay.
You haven't gotten to Russell's viruses yet.
Yeah. Are they your viruses, Russell? So this is the graph that I showed before of Varroa levels in August in particular, of this year and last year. And in general, what it looks like is there is a trend that the Varroa levels were higher in August this year. There's a lot more blue. Last year averaged about 2 mites per 100 bees. This year averaged about 3. So I don't know exactly what that means, if it means it's worse or not, but they were slightly higher this year, although it's unclear if it's actually significant. There's just so much variability in the data. This was May in the Midwest in 2014, May, June. So we sample end of May and into mid-June generally, into mid to late June. So these are the levels in May, June of 2014. And these were the levels in May, June of 2015. So technically the averages weren't different, but you can see there's a lot more variability within the data. There's a lot more random, just seemingly random colonies with much higher mite levels, which Dennis is terming mite bombs. So starting out before the honey flow, there were a few colonies with extremely high levels. And then what I did is this is the percent of beekeepers that we saw Varroa in. So if we saw Varroa on a bee, we write it down in the data. So this shows May, June, August, and September. So the percent of beekeepers that we sampled that we saw actual Varroa on their bees. So it looks like it's trending up more, but I honestly don't know if it's real. And then this is the same thing for deformed wing virus. The percent of beekeepers that we sampled that had the symptoms of deformed wing virus in their colonies. We're really good at spotting. It's like, it's what I'm best at, I think, this world. And then the same for parasitic mite syndrome. So even starting out in May, June, about 20% of the beekeepers that we sampled, we already saw parasitic mite syndrome in. So this is when it's noticeably that the brood gets all gross because of the mites. Okay, so there have been a few concerns about actual miticide resistance in the colonies. We can take samples for beekeepers if they're interested. And what they get is this report back about how, if there's any resistance and which of these 4 chemicals there is resistance to. So for this one, flumethrin, which isn't legal in the US, the mites had about 28% resistance to, but flumethrin, fluvalinate, and cumafos, there's still fairly widespread resistance in the US of the mites, so 3 of those. So far, there has not been any confirmed resistance to amitraz. Okay, and this just shows that in a different way. Okay, so this is my last slide of actual information. This shows the map of North Dakota and all the registered apiary locations.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, not, and you know, there's not all of them are on here either. It's not everybody registers like they should. But, you like that, Frank? Okay. So what we saw, at least in one beekeeper this year, was they were very, very rigorous about treating on time, and they treated a lot. But he was still seeing issues with mites weeks later, and we can't explain why except for the possibility that his colonies robbed out maybe neighbors, the colonies that were dying of mites. So it's scary and it's frustrating because even people that treat on time and get their mite levels down, you still need to check. You still need to look in those colonies and make sure that they aren't higher than before you treat it. So yeah, so that's a good ending, huh? So we have a huge project team. So thank you to all the different institutions. Thank you for having me here. This is like my favorite meeting of the year, so I'm really happy I got to come out. And then there's more information about the different programs on the website. But yeah, there's a question down there.
Yeah, it looks like from your results that we aren't getting better at killing mites.
No, I don't think we are getting better at killing mites. That's one of the worst issues.
Is it because we're treating the same as we have been for 4 years and not improving?
Honestly, so the question is are we not getting better at treating for mites because we've been treating the same for the last 4 years or more? Honestly, I honestly don't know. I mean, I'm open to suggestions. I'm not sure why. It seems like they have been worse lately, though.
So you've been taking this data for 4 years?
Yeah.
And the drought has been continuing. So have you noticed a pattern at all yet with weather and, I mean, I know you can.
So, yeah. So the question is if we've noticed a pattern with weather and the increase in mite levels, right? Okay. Honestly, I don't know. Sometimes if we get an earlier spring in the Midwest, it might mean more mite levels later because the bees get bigger earlier. And then you go the entire time without treating mites from the spring through till when you pull supers off. And we've seen issues then, but otherwise, I don't know about the drought. We're not drought. We don't have drought in the Midwest right now. So.
Now, you're primarily the Midwest. Probably, I don't know what you estimate, what 80% of those hives are now sitting in California. Have you came out and you're going to follow up data for those same beekeepers while they're here in California? To see what your mite numbers look like now after they should be 100% treated unless they miss something?
Yeah, so the question is if we'll go out now and go look at these beekeepers' hives that are sitting out in California. Some of them put them in the sheds. Some of them go down to Texas, and Megan's been sampling those, so maybe she can speak on that. Just give me a look. But I don't normally sample again until January, the beginning of January starting.
And the other question, if you're using, based on that data that you pulled up, mites per hundred, looking at it as an IPM perspective where you reach the treatment threshold, those probably wouldn't be at that level yet. So is that an acceptable number of mites? Of course, everybody here is going to say there's no acceptable level of mites. But at this point, what is considered what a hive can sustain?
So according to dentists and some research behind it, dentists finding those are 3 mites per 100 is when you should treat.
Correct.
5 mites per 100 is when you're going to have issues. Yeah. Bob?
Katie, has anybody actually taken all the different miticide materials and tested different programs for efficacy?
Okay, so has anybody taken all the miticide materials and tested different programs for efficacy?
Yes.
Not that I'm aware of. We have a lot of that within our data, and that's one of the things I really want to look at. But
based on that data, I might take a look at, okay, these are the treatments that we ought to test, programs we ought to test out.
Yeah. So it's developed some best management practices based on that.
But that having been said, you've been visiting these beekeepers for 4 years and you have data, and I'm sure that there are some of them who have consistently better numbers than others. And even with understanding that beekeepers all do things a little bit differently, you must have some observations about what works and what doesn't.
Yeah, some observations about what works and what doesn't. Treating earlier in the fall seems to work better. Even there's one beekeeper in particular that pulls off their supers and treats earlier, and they seem to have, even if they get really high levels, they're able to have better survival because they get those winter bees without mites. It seems like that does well treating earlier. Also, having the absolute lowest mite level possible going into the honey flow. People that have, I would say, even less than one mite going in, seem like they're, well, they don't go as fast. So that's, you know, it's good.
So in that sense, IPM less than 3 isn't helpful. It really is as low as you can go.
As low as yeah, I mean, I think the threshold is maybe more relevant in the fall, but yeah, I mean, I think in May, as low as you can go, for whatever that's worth. Brent?
Katie, just curiously, in all of your different tech teams, not just yours, but everybody in the whole United States, if you folks happen to run onto somebody who classically over not just 1 year, but maybe like 3, has some real low mite levels, maybe they're using something that's illegal, are you at liberty to tell the rest of the world not who it is that's doing it, but that you have found these that really are doing a job? Just whatever it is they're using, are you at liberty to tell us that, or do you have to zip up and be mum?
I'm looking for Dennis. I have no idea.
No. Oh, Dennis has to tell
no,
us.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I've heard of people getting in trouble for saying, you know, product A off-label. I mean, I don't really, individually especially, I wouldn't have an issue, and that's something that people want us to do is for the beekeepers that have been having really good, like low mite levels consistently, to tell them what they're doing. Yeah, but amateur seems to work. But Formic also can definitely work too, but it's timing.
I got it. Big thing.
Yeah.
I saw you had a slide on the resistance, mite resistance to different chemicals.
Mhm.
How is that calculated? Is that something that you guys test?
So the mite resistance to different chemicals is calculated at the USDA in Beltsville, Maryland. It's based, Jeff Pettis apparently came up with the test because it's called the Pettis test. So you have a jar of bees with mites on them, and you put them in an incubator with, I think it's about 1/4 of one of the strips. So like 1/4 of like an amateur strip or a camouflage or, you know, the check mite. And then you let them in there for a certain amount of time, and then you measure the drop. So obviously the more drop off, you know, after you do the test, you wash the bees for the remaining mites and count the number that drop off and that are still on the mites. And so it's a conversion factor to see what percentage actually is killed by it. Which, yeah, so does that answer? Okay.
Want us to better some more?
Thank you.